Hi, I'm Kristen, and today I'll be talking about an out of body experience that I had involving my deceased father. So, in 2014, my father passed away from complications from diabetes. So, he passed away from sepsis, which was a pretty awful way to go. So, he had been in the hospital for about 3 weeks. He had his heart stop. He passed away essentially, and he had been revived, and he was very afraid of dying. Years before that, in the 1990s, he had quadruple bypass surgery and he had an out of body experience. So during his experience, he was under anesthesia and the surgery was happening. And he remembered coming out of his body and he was floating up near the ceiling, looking down at the nurses and the doctors, and he saw what they were talking about and all of that. And when he came out of surgery, he told his doctor, I saw you while I was being operated on, and I saw what you were talking about. And the doctor essentially told him, well, that happens with lots of patients of mine. Like lots of patients tell me that they popped out of body and that they were floating near the ceiling, and they were able to tell this doctor exactly what had happened to them while they were out. So my dad knew that the soul existed, and he knew that we don't die when our physical bodies die, but he still didn't know what to expect. He didn't see a light. He didn't see anybody waiting for him when he was having that surgery. So when he passed, it was pretty traumatic to be thinking about, just because he didn't want to die. He didn't know where he was going, what would happen to him, and um, I don't know. It was a really tough time. So cut to a year in the future. So this was 2015, and I had moved out of state, and it was just a normal, typical night where I had gone to sleep. And this particular night, I felt like I was falling. So I had been asleep for I have no idea how long, a few hours, and I felt like I was about to roll out and hit the bed. And so my eyes opened, and everything looked a little weird. So at this moment, I saw that like the light in the air was a little bit shimmery, and I could see that the door to my bedroom was open. I could see through this kind of little hallway into the living room of my apartment, and there was a light on in the corner of the living room, and all of the light was kind of it was wrong. And I don't want to use wrong in a negative sense, but it didn't look the way that light would normally look. It was shimmery and golden. It seemed like almost like how when you see like bokeh and like magical kind of romantic types of scenes in movies or TV shows, it had that kind of atmosphere to it, just of seeing like just kind of like this shimmeringness to the light. And so I was laying there, and I still thought that I was in the bed, but I thought I had like fallen a few inches and was kind of like hanging off the edge, and I couldn't tell like why everything like looked bizarre and looked strange, looked magical, like it really shouldn't. And at that moment, I was really straining to move my eyes, and so I saw somebody coming from around the corner of the hallway and starting to walk into my room. And I instantly knew. I knew from the gait, I knew from the build, I knew from the types of pants, that it was my father. And so I could see that he was wearing kind of like these chino, like cotton slacks, and he had the shirt tucked in as he typically did. So he would frequently wear polos tucked into his chinos. And so I saw him coming, walking into the room, and starting to walk up to the end of my bed. And in that moment, I was just like realizing like my dad had passed, but my dad is here, and like my dad's spirit is here, and like getting excited and thinking about it. And I was straining really hard to kind of move my gaze up from this hallway up. And so my dad got to about, I would say, like where my hips are, as far as how far he had walked up the bed. And I was straining so hard to like look up and look at his face, and I was able to see kind of like his lower chest, and then I snapped back into my body. And so at that moment of seeing him, I felt like this jolt where like my soul had just like kind of slammed back into myself. And at that moment, I was not even facing the side of my bed like I had just been facing when I was out of body. I was laying on my side, facing onto the other side of the room. So it was very bizarre to have this kind of whole feeling of something is strange and magical looking, but still thinking that I was awake and I was still me and I was still physically me. To in a second just being snapped in and feeling the snap of my soul coming in, and realizing I wasn't even in the same posture or position that my soul was in. It was pretty disconcerting, and At the time, it's interesting to think about now with hindsight. I was so jolted by the fact that my soul wasn't in my body right now, that at that moment, I wasn't thinking about, like, I just saw my dad, or my dad is probably still in the room, but now that I'm back in my body, I can't see him. It was more of this feeling of like, what's going on? How did that happen to me? Like, I am scared. I had never had that feeling of not being my physical body before. I had a strong belief in the soul and that we continue on afterwards, but I didn't have any idea of that kind of sensation, or what it would feel like, what it would look like, what it would be like. And so I remember laying on my side and just kind of thinking like I want to get back to bed. I was very fearful. And it was only in the days afterwards that I was really able to start processing it and thinking like, oh well, my dad was here, and my dad was so afraid of what would happen to him after he's gone, and he wasn't a religious man, so I think that was also a concern of his, that like what if there are certain religions that are true, and because I don't go to church, and because I don't pray, and because I don't do this, that, and whatever, like I don't know where I'm going to go once I die. But obviously him walking into my bedroom, and I believe that he was partially responsible for being able to pull me out so that I could see him. I think that was like a beautiful gift that he was able to give me, to see that he was fine, and that he was still around. Nothing horrible had happened to him, and I think it was just kind of one last visit before I feel like he had moved on to another place. And since that happened to me, and since I saw him during that OBE, I have not felt him around at all. I do feel like he may have reincarnated, or maybe he has some bigger role than he needs to play, in heaven or on the other side. But it feels like he's not concerned with what this life was that was here before. He Yeah, it just feels like his energy has gone somewhere else. And again, because he did come in this magical, beautiful, heavenly light, obviously I think that the place that he went to was probably a very wonderful, beautiful, gorgeous place. So again, just to touch really quickly again on like what it felt like to know that I was out of body, rather than just having an astral projection or a lucid dream or something like that. um, in the moment, I did not know. In the moment, I didn't know that I wasn't awake. I didn't. And if I hadn't had that visceral jolting feeling, I might have just chalked it up to a dream. But the fact that I physically felt my energy body slamming, and it felt like an electrical sucking feeling, and then like getting hit and snapped backwards. That was really what told me that I was having an actual experience, and that my soul hadn't been with me, my body, during that time. So if you have ever had one of these types of experiences where you just spontaneously come out of body, and maybe were a little bit confused, didn't know what was going on, or even if you are a practiced experiencer that can willfully go out of body, or has had multiple out of body experiences, please tell me about it in the comments. I absolutely love hearing about these types of stories. Oh, and especially if you have been out of body and you've seen a loved one that has passed over, that would be wonderful to hear about too. So thank you so much for listening today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.